On today's show, the Hawks pick up a very memorable victory on the road in Chicago. It was the two-way guys. Daeqwon Plowden's debut, Keaton Wallace's big night, awesome defense, and more, and all that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1888 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you deep in the night here on a Wednesday evening into Thursday. And at the top of the show, I should tell you that this podcast is sponsored by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. The first whistle to the final drive, they make it easier at the NFL playoffs to make it really more exciting at FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, for a new customer, at $5 to get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet at FanDuel. Place to go is FanDuel.com to get started. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make it your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find your podcast. And please like this video on YouTube as you are watching it. And please, please, please tell your friends and family about the podcast. And we'll dive into what became a very memorable and really fun night. I can sometimes be jaded, having covered a lot of sports in my adult life here, but a 110-94 victory for the Hawks on the road in Chicago. A lot going on in this one. The Hawks were shorthanded to the max, basically, in this game. And truthfully, it was an awesome win for Atlanta. They're now 21-19 on the season at the 40-game mark. They've been playing well enough to be relevant in the Eastern Conference. All that stuff is very much fun. But this one was headlined by the work of two-way players, Keaton Wallace and Daeqwon Plowden. So I will get to my usual analysis in a minute, but I just want to start by saying this, that sports are awesome sometimes. I still love sports. I cover them, but it's a job for me, but sports are awesome. And I've always felt that. It's what is a good example tonight. And as I'll get to, the Hawks were just decimated in this game. Like, the jokes were flying on social media, and I think understandably so, about the roster. Like, I tweeted out the lineups in this game, starting lineups, what the bench was going to look like, and people were like, what's going on? You know, missing the Hawks were without Trey and Jalen and DeAndre Hunter, etc. They were big underdogs in this game. It's a back-to-back with travel, all that stuff. And this game was pretty weird, honestly, along the way. But Daeqwon Plowden makes his NBA debut after signing a two-way a little while ago with the Hawks. He makes his first 7 shots in the game, including a bunch of threes. He has a massive game in a spot where they actually needed him to contribute in this game. Then you get into Keaton Wallace, who's been around a lot this year for the Hawks. He's been in the rotation like 13 or 14 times. Like, he's not a stranger at all to Hawks fans, but he's been in the G League the last few weeks. Like, he's a fringe guy. He's on a 2-way contract. I like Keaton a lot, but that's what he is. He made a game winner literally last night in the G League on Tuesday. He comes out and leads the Hawks in scoring with a career-high 27 points on 19 shooting possessions. He was great in this game. That's 46 combined points from two-way guys who were called up today. And that's a microcosm of how the Hawks got this great win. So it's a credit to those guys for being willing, able, and ready to play. Just for the record, Quinn Snyder said from the podium tonight that Wallace and Plowden didn't even realize they were going to be actually playing in the big leagues today until this morning. That's what Quinn said. They called them up today, and they didn't know about this until this morning. It's also a huge credit beyond the players to the coaching staff and the organization for how they run things in College Park. Like, it can be hyperbole sometimes to talk about, like, you know, all this development stuff, but it's true. Like, sometimes it actually does matter. The Hawks do value the G League. They've had successes there. Vit Krejci is a success of the G League program for the Hawks. They run this similar stuff in the G League. Ryan Schmidt last year, and then, you know, Steve Clyde this year. That allows for development and cohesion and trust and all that stuff. So anyway, I'll get into the game now, as I always do, but it was a really fun night if you just kind of like sports and like sports stories. Like, the Plowden thing was just awesome. Like, he was obviously like on fire, having out-of-body experience for most of this game. Keaton was great. And just a really, really fun game. And you cannot help but to be happy, honestly, just on a human level, for guys like Daeqwon Plowden and Keaton Wallace. So that's kind of where I wanted to begin the podcast. We'll get into kind of the normal analysis part of this now, but I want to leave with that. So this is the 4th and final game against the Bulls this year. The Hawks have played 10% of their games this year against the Bulls. 4 of the first 40. They're now done with the Bulls for a while. First game of this road trip for the Hawks after, by the way, I said this last time on the show, but the Hawks have one home game in 24 days because of all the weirdness with all of the travel and the postponement against the Rockets, etc. I teased this a little bit earlier. I'll get into more detail later on, but the Hawks had 10 players available in this game. One of them was Plowden, who had not played in the NBA until today. Another one was Don Barlow, the only guy who did not play in the game, who was active, plus Keaton. So they were very short-handed. no Trey, no Jalen, no Hunter, etc. By the way, that was kind of a surprise. Trey has a rib contusion. Hopefully, it's just a one-game injury for Trae Young. We don't know anything else about Jalen and Hunter at this point in time. That was not a surprise that they were out after they missed the game yesterday, but that's kind of all we have. Plus, the first game ever that did not have Zachary Richelet in it. And obviously, as far as a present-day on-court value, is not a huge loss to be without Richelet. But at the forward spot, they were pretty light in this game, and Richelet missed this one. Not a huge concern, I don't think, for moving forward. We'll see. Coming into the night, the Hawks had a minus 16 net rating in all minutes without Trey or Jalen on the court. And they come out and they win this game by 16 points. So I promise I'll get to the offense later on. And I did lead with Wallace and Plowden, which is mostly offensive because they had 46 points combined. But as far as the actual analysis of the game is concerned, it was really the defense that led the way for the Hawks in this game pretty convincingly. They had an 88.7 defensive rating in the game. That speaks for itself. They allowed less than 0.9 points per possession, and that's awesome in any context. But it was also their best defensive rating of the entire season in Game 40. Also their fewest points allowed of the season, 94, again, in Game 40. So anytime you do all that, yeah, there was some help from Chicago in this game for sure, but you were awesome defensively when those are the numbers in Game 40 of the season. The Bulls did shoot poorly from three, 6-27 from the three-point range. They're not a terrible shooting team. They had a bad night there, but the Hawks did absolutely crush on the margins. They forced 20 turnovers in this game. They grabbed 80% of available rebounds on the defensive glass. That's an elite number. They only allowed 10 free throw attempts. They kept Zach LaVine in check. Most of that was Dyson Daniels, who was awesome in this game, as he always is defensively. And that was big because LaVine's been awesome against the Hawks this year, but not tonight. He was very ordinary and basically a complete decimation defensively. And honestly, they were going to need to be good defensively. Not like this good, but when you can't protect the best defensive game of the season, but playing without Trey and Jalen and Hunter, you got to be able to get stops. And the Hawks did get stops early, often, and really throughout this one. My bridge to discuss the offense quickly here is that the Hawks had, in a game that they won by 16 points on the road, they had a 50.1% true shooting percentage. That is terrible. And they won this game by 16 points. So it wasn't like, if you asked me beforehand, all right, what's the most likely pathway to victory? I might have said, defense does its job, holds it down, and then maybe you have a great shooting night. The second part of that did not happen in this game. In fact, the Hawks' two best shooters, Garrison Matthews and Bogdan Bogdanovic, combined to shoot 1 for 17 from the field in this game. I tweeted this during the game, and I'll say it again now. If you told me nothing else other than, all right, here's what the Hawks have roster-wise, no Trey, no Jalen, no Hunter, and then Bogey and Garrison are going to be 1 for 17 from the field, I would have said the Hawks' winning percentage was let's just say very, very low. They would have been a massive underdog if that's all you knew. But the rest of it went pretty well, obviously. But they did not shoot the ball well in this game at all. They only had a 106 offensive rating in the game. That's not incredibly terrible, but 106 is a below-average mark to be kind. In fact, it was the least efficient offensive game of the season in a win for Atlanta. They've had worse games offensively, which they lost. This is their worst offensive game in a victory by the numbers all year long, which, given the personnel, is not terribly shocking. But, thank God for Wallace and Plowden. They were 9 of 13 from three combined. The rest of the team was 4 for 30 from three in this game. So the Hawks did really two things well on offense. One was ball security, and that's been a problem all year long without Trey. And I won't give all the numbers now, but they've been really, really bad. Just trust me on this. When Trey's off the court, they have a turnover issue. They have all year long. Not today. 11 turnovers in the whole game in a fast-paced game. And then they also had 27 second chance points. And if you're listening to the podcast regularly, you know where I'm about to go with this to end this first segment. The Hawks absolutely crushed the possession battle in this game. And if you're going to shoot poorly, you got to win the possession battle. And that means taking more shots and shooting possessions than your opponent. The Hawks ended up with 16 more shooting possessions than the Bulls. They took 12 more shots in the field, and they took 12 more shots from the free throw line. So 12, actually, I think it was 18 possessions. Anyway, there was extra possessions were aplenty in this game, basically, for Atlanta. And they didn't shoot it well, but you don't have to when you just dominate everything else. They dominated turnovers, they dominated the glass, free throw line. Everything other than shooting was really good for Atlanta in this game. And overall, a memorable night for sure. Is it replicable? Like, maybe not. I'm not going to try to pull cold water too much on this podcast. I'm sure it'll come out a little bit later on. Like, you can't rely on some of this stuff to happen every time, but it's a really good win. The Bulls are not a terrible team. They're not great either, but you go on the road and win a game as a 6.5-point underdog without your best guys. And it's a very, very fun night at the office. And I think everyone, if you watch the reactions, you listen to the clips from post-game, from Quinn and others, like, it was a very upbeat locker room for good reason. And honestly, as we'll get into later on in the podcast, they have some pretty tough games coming up. So to make another win here and do it like this was awesome for Atlanta. And we'll get into kind of more about how it unfolded later on in the podcast. But first, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. And right now, if you're a new customer, you can bet $5, you get $300 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's $300 to get the action going right now. The FanDuel app is really easy to navigate, and a variety of bets keeps every single game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly with no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered across the board. They have also looking forward across the sports betting space from over-unders to point spreads, money lines, player props, future bets, significant parlays, live betting, and so much more. The FanDuel app is really safe and secure as well. It covers the entire range of sports. That includes the NBA, and of course the NFL playoffs, plus college football, MLB, WNBA, hockey, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. And the place to go is FanDuel.com to join up today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. One more time, that is FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's show is sponsored by Skims. When I found out that Skims was actually making underwear for men, I began to be intrigued, honestly. I've heard a lot about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give it a try for myself. And let me tell you, it lives up to the hype in a big way. Many people have issues with their underwear, from fit to comfort, or just finding the right style for what they're actually looking for, and Skims changed all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with a perfect balance of comfort and style. For example, the stretch 5-inch washer briefs have rave reviews across the board. They're perfect for an active lifestyle. They move with you. They never lose their shape and comfort, and they stay in place all day long. Whether working out or just running errands, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear available anywhere across the board. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing in any situation, and the place to go to shop is SKIMS Mens, and it's skims.com/LockedOnNBA, and of course at Skims stores. Also, let them know that we sent you to them. I have placed an order, select podcast in the survey, and select our show in the drop-down menu that actually follows that prompt. One more time here, the place to go is skims.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, as far as how this game actually unfolded game flow-wise, the Hawks never trailed. So that's a bit of a spoiler alert. It was never like incredibly comfortable. They were up double digits for a large portion of the second half, but it was not a runaway until the last 4 minutes. In fact, it was a single-digit game with 4 minutes to go. But Atlanta did lead from the outset and never trailed. There were some ties along the way, but early on, a couple of nice driving buckets from David Roddy. Actually, his first two buckets, he scored the first two possessions of the game and then went over 9 the rest of the game, which is actually kind of funny. But that happened. The only real hiccup early on, and I'll just note this now, I think Clint Capella was actually pretty good in this game, but he took at least 3 very bad shots. One of which was a 7-foot hook shot in the beginning of the game, which I tweeted about in real time. If you listen to the podcast regularly, you will know that I tend to think Clint is better than everybody else tends to think Clint is. But at the same time, he just cannot take those contested, more than 3 or 4 foot hook shots over centers in particular, unless you just absolutely have to. And about a minute later, it was a different shot. He actually had a great seal on a smaller player and a little bit of a 3-foot flip shot. That is totally fine. What you don't want is the 7-foot contested hook, which, by the way, I don't know if the Hawks, in fact, I suspect, knowing how NBA players and coaches operate, the Hawks are not telling him not to do that, because otherwise he wouldn't be taking 6-7 hooks in one game. But anyway, I hated that shot early on. A couple of the shots were bad in this game. But anyway, that was the one hiccup early on. Dyson Daniels had a great block on Patrick Williams early in the first quarter. Williams not a great player or anything, but he's a lot bigger than Dyson, and Dyson just walled him off and sealed him and blocked that shot like he was a big. Dyson is an incredible defender. That's not a huge breaking news thing for any Hawks fan, but that was a nice flash early in this one. So rotationally, they started Keaton Wallace, which didn't surprise me, but surprised everybody else. I know it's a little bit unusual. Keaton had not played in an NBA game for about 2 weeks. To have him go from playing in College Park literally yesterday to starting is not usually the pathway, but if you're going to have him called up, it makes sense to start him. The Bulls are a pretty guard-heavy team. They play a lot of guys on the perimeter. In particular, you got Kobe White, You got even Zach LaVine, Josh Giddey. They were without a couple of guys, but I would assume who played this game too. Like, Lonzo Ball didn't play, but I think it was logical to start Keaton, and that worked out obviously very well. They also started Roddy, which I know everybody hated and I didn't love either, but they did kind of rectify that. He played less and less as the game went along. I don't think he was absolutely unplayable in this game, but it was not particularly good anyway. But it was Bogey, Okongwu, and Matthews, the first three off the bench. That was the top 8 that I would have expected to play for sure. The uncertainty was whether the Hawks were going to try Plowden, Dom Barlow, maybe both or neither. And the answer ended up being just Plowden as the ninth man. Now, Plowden obviously shot the ball incredibly well, which helped things. He made his NBA debut again in this spot. His first shot was a corner three. He had a couple of nice cuts around the rim. He ended up this game with making 5 threes. So, he's a good shooter, by the way. Not a great one. He's like a 37% three-point shooter in the G League, which is a good number, but not like a great one in that league by any means. But he's a capable shooter. He's a good athlete. He's kind of a combo forward type. Not a huge player, but certainly more of a forward than a backcourt player. But I thought it was good to have him out there. Good to try that. I think he kind of just fits better than Roddy. Roddy's skill level is interesting, but certainly I think defensively, Plowden is a better athlete, all that stuff. Anyway, they were up 2 at the end of the first quarter. I thought the Hawks were admirably hanging around, and part of that was that they won the turnover battle early this one. Then they had their first big run of the game, 15-2. Early second quarter, there was a massive block by Capella on Jalen Smith that led to a run-out layup by Plowden. Then they had some awesome ball movement possessions. There was one where V collapsed the defense, swing, and a 3 by Keaton Wallace at the end of it. And then Keaton had a big stretch by himself there. In fact, he had a new career high in NBA scoring by the middle of the second quarter, which he ended up almost doubling after that. The Bulls did come back a little bit. V went to the locker room with an apparent injury, did come back into the game, so hopefully he's okay, but that was a little bit of a scare given how short they already were roster-wise. Quinn won a challenge in the late in the first half. That was actually a good challenge. Not a huge overturn, but certainly could have saved them possession later on if it actually mattered. And then there was another big run at the end of the half to go up by 15 points, actually. The last play was, Dyson got fouled, went to the line, missed the free throw, but nobody boxed him out on a free throw. And it was just a free run to the basket, a strange play that was a free 2 points for the Hawks, basically. And then it was an awesome finish by Okongwu late in the half on a spin, on kind of spinning, slashing move to the rim to go by 14 points at halftime. And the Hawks shot by 14 points despite shooting 5 of 19 from 3. But the biggest thing is that, and this kind of persisted the entire game, is that they were dominating the turnover battle. It was 13-3 at the end of the first half, and that was persistent. The Hawks were able to kind of create some good looks, I thought, early in the third quarter, but didn't have that much working. I will say this. Dyson tried to detonate on the Bulls on a big dunk early in the third quarter. And shouts to my friend in front of the podcast, Tyler Jones, who has always talked about Dyson needs to try to dunk more. He tried to he wound up big time on that one. Didn't make it. That was a funny moment in the third quarter that didn't cost him anything, just because it was kind of notable to me. It did allow a 12-2 run mid-quarter. The Hawks had their worst offensive stretch in the game. Early in that third quarter, they were actually 5 of 16 from the field and 1 of 7 from 3 in that stretch. Bogey was brutal in this one, but he finally made a shot in the third quarter, kind of break out of that a little bit and keep his streak alive, by the way, for threes. At least won in 109 straight games now. But they were not very good in the third quarter, but they avoided disaster, is how I put it. They were up by 8 going into the fourth quarter, and then the Bulls just could not score in the fourth quarter. The Bulls scored 16 points in the fourth. That was the game. In some respects, the Hawks were not great offensively in the fourth quarter. It was kind of a good microcosm of the game. The Hawks were not terrible, but not that good in the fourth on offense, but they were great on defense in the fourth, and that was enough to withstand. Now, Quinn loves to draw up plays for Onyeka to take threes coming out of timeouts and quarter breaks. He had one there at the beginning of the fourth quarter. He made the shot, which is always nice. Also, a great screen by Garrison Matthews to free him up. I thought it was notable to me. They're at 13 points, and by the middle of the fourth quarter, V hit a pretty absurd step-back jumper that I love to see at the end of the shot clock in the middle of the quarter. And then Plowden made a 7th straight shot. He was just an unbelievable zone, basically. He finally missed one, and ironically, it was probably his easiest shot of the game. Other than the dunk that he had from three-point range, though, he had a wide-open corner three that Neek, I thought, was funny. Neek called it a heat check. It was not a heat check. He was wide open in the corner. He just missed it, which happens. It's kind of just, can't predict basketball kind of thing. But the lead was down to 8. On a LaVine 3 with 4 minutes to go. Now, the Hawks were in control, but they were not dominating at that point. And that was a little bit of a scary moment. In fact, Bob Rathman, in front of the podcast, said it right before that on the TV broadcast. He said, the one thing the Hawks have to avoid here is a 3-point barrage, basically by the Bulls, and then immediately when we get to 3, it's like okay, a little bit. But to their credit, the Hawks buckled down. The Bulls only scored. In fact, I don't even know if they scored again. I'm checking this right now in real time because I forgot to make this note. I believe the Bulls may not have scored again. Yeah, they never did. The Bulls did not score for the final 4:08 of the game. That's bad podcasting, but I wanted to be sure about that. Yeah, the Bulls didn't score in the last 4 minutes. That Levine 3 was their last points. And the Hawks only scored, 8 more points in the game, but that was more than enough. And it was not pretty necessarily, but Dyson hit a floater off the glass with like 90 seconds to go to I was like, oh, this is actually going to happen. They're going to win this one. That was the dagger. It was comfortable by the end. And a great win for the Hawks. So as far as like stuff to add that I didn't say before, I think it's important to note that in a one-game scenario, I always say this, it's easier sometimes to play these one-offs when you don't have your best guys. And some of the stuff's unsustainable. Like the Hawks would need to have more creation overall. Like if you just said, all right, what would this roster do over a 20-game sample? It probably wouldn't be very good, if we're being honest. But they defended like crazy. They played very, very hard throughout this game. They out-efforted, I thought, the Bulls. And I thought the Bulls didn't play well, to be frank. Like, I think that there were moments like you're putting against a team that's playing David Roddy and Garrison Matthews and Bogey together at times, and you can't score on them. And it's like that's a lot of that's the Hawks to their credit. Some of that's the Bulls. Like, how can you not score right now? So that kind of stuff is worth noting. And I like to be real on the podcast. I'm not going to always give you all the rainbows, but I do believe that the Hawks in general played really well. Like, as we'll get into later on when I talk about the player-by-player evaluation stuff, they played through Okongwu a lot offensively. That was a very good idea, and it worked out very well. Okongwu did a very good job as a distributor in this game. Lots of back cuts. Like, they had good feel along the way. They didn't have their normal shot creation on the perimeter. Keaton did a great job with that, but other than that, it's guys that are more, facilitators, swing guys. Dyson was aggressive, which is good to see, but Veet is more of a passer. Roddy's a facilitator passer, etc. And instead of playing through their guards in the same volume that they normally do, Onyeka was great as a hub. So we'll get into that too. But anyway, plenty to get to. There's more to add on the player-by-player stuff, but one more time, an awesome win for Atlanta. All right. Coming up in a second, my player evaluations from the good to the mostly good. I'll say this. Most of it was good along the way. Other than maybe Bug Bogdanovic, who I do love dearly, but it was rough for him. We'll get into that and more in just one moment. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privilege are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%, plus you get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That is over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on our annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 per month for 1 year for the first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. All right, we'll dive in now to how the players performed in this game. Only one guy of the 10 who were active did not play, and that was Don Barlow. Again, one more time here, as far as injuries are concerned, the Hawks had 7 guys out. Mo Gay is still in the G League. People asking me why that would have been. I don't have a great answer for you. The Hawks called up 2 of their 3 guys that were in the G League. Mo's on a full contract. I don't know if there's a story or what. College Park has a game tomorrow. I don't know if that was why. We'll see, but that's what happened there. And I'll say in general, only one guy on the Hawks roster played poorly for their normal baseline, and that was Bogey. So let's talk about him now. Bogey, 20 minutes, 3 points, 1 assist. He was 1 of 9 on threes and 1 of 10 from the floor. So 0-1 on twos. I thought Bogey was terrible, honestly. Now, he was bad last night too. This is not an excuse. It's just more of an explanation potentially. This was his first back-to-back of the season. He's not played at all on back-to-backs. This is the first time he did that. Perhaps that was why, to some degree. He's had a rough season. I will note that, only a few days ago, he was good in the Phoenix game, for instance. He made a bunch of shots. I've seen some, what I would describe as pretty severe overreactions to Bogey having he's not playing well right now. Don't get me wrong. He was not good in this game. He was bad. Defensively bad, offensively rough. etc. I'm not excusing that. What I am saying is he has a pretty long record of being good. So for me, as someone who likes to not get too high or too low, I'm going to lean on the history for a long time probably, and just tell you that like I don't think he's just like cooked now or bad or unable to make shots or whatever. He's bad in this game. That's all I'll say on this podcast as far as this game was concerned. He was not good, and I'll leave it there for now. And kind of hopefully for the Hawks' sake, he bounces back because look, I still believe this. The Hawks are the best that they can be when he's good. He just was not good in this game. Now, Garrison Matthews also couldn't make a shot. Garrison had 3 points, was 0 of 7 from the floor, 0 of 6 from 3. I actually thought Garrison did not play poorly. I thought Bogey played poorly. Not just shot poorly, played poorly. There's a difference there. Obviously, Garrison's value stems from him being able to make shots from three-point range. He's a specialist. But I thought he competed really well. I thought he drew a three-shot foul. He passed the ball well. He defended pretty well by his standards. Two assists, no turnovers. I thought Garrison, obviously, he needs to make shots, but I thought he actually had a pretty decent floor game for someone who did not make anything from the field. Plowden, I mentioned before, but Plowden, 19 points in 25 minutes. He was in a zone that he's probably he may never be in his life again. Like he made his first 7 shots, 4 rebounds, did a 4 foul. I think defensively he was pretty solid in this game. He is a good athlete. You know, he's not, as far as like creation is concerned, he's more of a straight line drive guy. Like he's not a great passer in the G League. If you watch him, like he had no assists in this game. That's not hugely surprising to me. He's more of a play finisher, but I like Plowden. I don't know if he's like a high-end NBA player, but he was good in this game, obviously, very valuable. And the combination of his athleticism, defense, and a little bit of shooting, and that was a kind of a good spark for the Hawks in this game. I'll actually be interested to see if they keep him around a little bit longer than just this one. And one more time, a great story. Just an awesome night for a guy to make his debut and make his first 7 shots and have this memorable victory, 19 points. That career high for him might stand for a long time. Like it might be the most points he ever scores in the game. Like that's definitely possible. And that was a fun night for him. Okongwu, I kind of teased it a little bit earlier. I thought Okongwu was really, really good, especially on offense in this one. 14 points, 13 rebounds, 7 assists, a team high 7 assists for Onyeka. Has steal on the block as well, plus 8. He was 4 of 8 on twos, 1 of 1 from 3. Left the line 5 times, made 3 of them. They use him as a hub in this game, like as a passer, operator, and I've long thought that was an undervalued, underutilized part of Okongwu's game. Now, part of that's that they have Trey, so like they don't have to do this stuff all the time. But Okongwu, the theory of him going back to the draft even was that he could do all this, like he could do DHO stuff. He's a very skilled player. That's still the case. The gap in offensive skill between Capella and Okongwu has always been massive. That's not a huge secret, obviously. But in this game, and Quinn said at postgame, they wanted him to do more of that on purpose because they didn't have their creation on the perimeter, which makes total sense to me. And he operated that really well. Like he forced a couple, I would say. He had 2 turnovers. That's fine with me. But the 7 assists, like a lot of those were like true, like diming up, easy layups, like good facilitating stuff. I don't know how much that's going to continue, but they should use it more. They just should. He was really good in this game. By the numbers, they were better defensively with him off the court. I think Capella was really good defensively in this game. That's part of that. But they were still plenty good defensively with him on. And they were really, really good offensively. Not really good. They were better offensively. And it was not his fault. They were not better than that. I thought he was excellent in this game. He played very well. He was good last night too. And just to answer the question, hopefully this is the breakout. I've been trying to give you both sides of the aisle on Okongwu. Like I've long believed in his talent. I like the draft pick more than most people did 5 years ago. But he's always had like one step forward, maybe a half step back. And he has never been able to fully entrench as like the guy at center, which is why even as recently as this week, I was saying, look, he's not locked in as a center of the future. He might be part of the plan there. And then, of course, he rails out, 2 of his best games of the season back to back. That's great. I think he's capable of that. He just has to, for one, stay healthy. That's a big thing for him. And number 2, stay consistent. It's always been a consistency thing for Onyeka. His highs have always been high. Just the lows have been pretty rough. And it's been a high right now. Hopefully that continues. And he was really, really good in both of these games that the Hawks won on Tuesday and on Wednesday. To the starters. David Roddy, 4 points, and they came in the first 3 minutes of the game. He was 0 of 9 from the field after that. But to his credit, look, defensively, Roddy's very limited, as I've talked about many, many times on the show. But he had 3 steals. He was active there. 6 rebounds, 2 assists. 0 of 5 from 3. Like nobody can make a shot other than Wallace and Plowden, ironically, in this game. I thought he was better than he usually is. But the Hawks, the Bulls didn't take advantage of him probably nearly enough that they probably should have in this game. I don't want to pick on Roddy. He wasn't the problem in this one, so we'll leave it there. Clint Capella, 21 minutes for Clint, 11 points, 10 rebounds, had a block shot. I mentioned before the hooks. There were probably 3 bad shots from Clint in this game. He was 5'11 from the field. I think 3 of the bad shots, if you take those off, it would have been good. It's one of those things where we kind of went back in the Wayback Machine, where there have been plenty of nights the last couple of years where Clint will have 3 bad moments that everyone remembers, and the rest of the game it was actually good. That was the same tonight. I thought he was actually quite good, other than the bad shots. And look, I'm not excusing that. They were bad shots. They should not happen. He should never take a hook shot unless he has to, in some respects, at least from more than 4 feet away. But overall, if you can try to look beyond those moments, he was quite good, I thought, defensively in particular, anchoring, and the numbers played that out as well. They had like an 80 defensive rating with Capella on the court. Like, he was just really good on that end of the floor. And then I guess we'll end with Keaton. But Vit Krejci left the game briefly with injury. Hopefully he's okay. 11 points, 6 assists for Vit. Had 2 block shots, was plus 21. I thought Vit had a good game. He wasn't like totally dominant, but he was a good ball mover, good facilitator, played good defense in this game. He had a lot of the Kobe White assignment throughout the game, it seemed like, and did a good job there. So I liked what I saw from Vit. Other than the injury, hopefully he's fine there. And just a very solid game. Didn't shoot it well from 3-point range like nobody did, but he was 3-5 from 2, and good passing numbers, etc. I thought Dyson was very good in this one. 18 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and a block, plus 9. He was 6 of 12 on 2s, which is not like incredible, but totally fine. 1 of 4 from 3. Did have free throw issues, was only 3 of 7 from the line in this game. I like when he's aggressive. Like, I think the most aggressive he's been all year was the Boston game without Trey. For whatever reason, I'm sure the coaching staff is encouraging it. The bulb goes off for Dyson when Trey's not there, and it's like, oh, I have to be aggressive now. I hope that Dyson has more aggressiveness all the time, or aggression all the time. That'd be helpful. The finishing's not always incredible, but it's okay. He made good decisions in this game. Only 2 turnovers in this one. Good passing, rebounding, defense. Like, he was really good, I thought, across the board. And then Keaton Wallace, career high, 27 points, 6 assists, 6 rebounds, 4 steals for Keaton as well. He was 6 of 11 on 2s, 4 of 7 on 3s. Really efficient. The number one question I got during and after the game was like, why isn't he the backup point guard? And I'll just say this. I'm not trying to pile on Keaton. Keaton has done his job and more this year. He's been a valuable piece for the Hawks to plug holes on the roster. He's on a 2-way for a reason, is what I would say. Now, when he makes shots from the perimeter, he's better, as most guys are. But it's not like the Hawks have not given him a chance, was what I would say. With Plowden, it's like, okay, he came out of nowhere. No one's ever seen him before. Keaton's been on the rotation more than a dozen times this year. And he's been fine, but he's not like dominated to the point where like tonight was not a normal effort from Keaton Wallace. And I shouldn't say ever. Performance. I like Keaton. He's valuable. But for everyone declaring backup point guard fixed now, I would just take a step back from that point of view. If this was the reality all the time, obviously that I would agree with you. But and yet I have argued, if you listen to the podcast the last couple of weeks, I don't know why Wallace and Plowden and even Gay have been in College Park recently. I think with all the injury issues, particularly, like, you should probably have those guys around. I think Keaton should just be around. This is a play every game if you don't want to have him play every game, but I think that he should just be around for the Hawks with their situation back at point guard. I've had that view for a while. That's still the case now. But as far as today was concerned, he was awesome. Like, he was clearly feeling it. Plowden was the one who hadn't missed a shot in a long time, so there was more attention there, and Keaton wasn't quite as new. But I thought Keaton was really, really good in this game. And that could be the best game of the season. And that'd be great for him if that happens. But 38 minutes too, like going from playing a back-to-back with weird travel when you're from the G League, you're probably on a commercial flight, all those things. Like, man, awesome night for Keaton Wallace, Daeqwon Plowden, and everybody else for the Hawks. Okay. Hopefully that's a positive enough podcast. I don't always do the in fact, I'm very rarely in my feels too much, but I thought it was a great capital S sports night. It was fun to watch. Hopefully you enjoyed it as well. From here, the Hawks have a challenging weekend ahead, let's just say. On Saturday, they play the Celtics on the road. Tough spot. Now, Boston did lose tonight to Toronto, and they've not been playing as well as they have been at times. I think Boston actually lost 3 of their last 5, which is, for them, is a bad stretch for the reigning champions. Also, the Hawks did beat them there this year, and I think maybe because of that, it might be a little bit more up for that one. But at the very least, the Hawks will probably be underdogs in that game. It's obviously not impossible that they win it. Hopefully, by the way, as a sidebar, hopefully my probably annoying stance on the podcast that like nothing's easy in the NBA. Sometimes that comes to fruition on your side. Tonight was a good example of that. I always give the caveat before games the Hawks are quote unquote supposed to win against bad teams. Like, hey guys, they're all pros. Like, you can lose this kind of game. Tonight it was like, hey guys, the Hawks can win this kind of game even with the situation with the roster. It was just that was a good example of what I mean sometimes when I say that on the podcast. But anyway, tough one on Saturday in Boston. Not unwinnable, but certainly a challenge. And then Monday, I'll save the rant for now. But the Hawks do not play at home on MLK Day, which I did a rant about this summer. I hate that. I think the Hawks should be playing at home on Monday, but they're not. They are playing, but it's in New York. And that'll be a tough game too. I know they've beaten the Knicks twice this year, but the Knicks are very good. So it's like that was going to be an easy game whatsoever. I believe at this moment, after a win today, the Knicks are 27-15 on the year. Like that's a good team. So the Hawks will be underdogs next two games. They can maybe hopefully win one, but makes it even more important and notable and really strong for their resume that they were able to win these two games this week and get back up to 21-19 on the year. All right, everybody. I'll stop talking now. I'm sure it was a longer podcast than you were ready for, probably than I was ready for as well. Late night here on a Wednesday into Thursday, but hopefully you enjoyed it. If you're a new listener that just found the podcast, please subscribe to the show on Apple, on Spotify. We're also on YouTube. Please like the show there as well. And tell your friends about the podcast. Follow us on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there if you want to at BT Rowland. I am also on Blue Sky at BT Rowland, and you can also follow my non-podcast work on the Hawks. I write, share audio, etc. at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody. Hopefully you enjoy this one as much as I did. We'll have more podcast content coming up. I have guests planned, all that stuff. We'll have full coverage as we always do. And we'll see you all next time.